Can we all just get along? Apparently we can't. Jeff Sessions announced that he is rescinding the quell memo, which reflects the Department of Justice relatively passive policy on enforcing federal cannabis laws. Unlike announcements from the DOJ in the past, this announcement was met by a yawn by the cannabis businesses. The harshest reaction came from local and state government officials who insisted that they were disappointed, concerned, and surprised by Sessions' move. And so am I. Now, let's be very real here about what Sessions is trying to do. Sessions is trying to turn back the hands of time on where we are as a country. If you look at all the recent polls, weed legalization is pretty much an open and shut case. Liberals, libertarians, millennials, and even some conservatives agree that weed is an issue. Weed legalization and liberalization of weed policy should be left up to the states. A majority of people think you should just legalize it. Not only is it beneficial for states because they can bring in tax revenue, but it's also beneficial because it decreases the cost of the criminal justice process, of, it decreases the cost of putting people in jail, it decreases the court cost, and it's a benefit to states. Just ask the state of Colorado, which is making money hand over fist when they decided to legalize marijuana almost 5 or 6 years ago. But that still hasn't stopped our good old country bumpkin Attorney General. Here's what he said about marijuana in the past.
Marijuana is not the kind of thing that ought to be legalized. It ought not to be minimized. That it's in fact a very real danger.
And if that wasn't enough for you, here's what he also said about marijuana. Good people don't smoke marijuana. You can't have the President of the United States talking about marijuana like it's no different than taking a drink. It is different. It's already causing a disturbance in states that have legalized it. I thought those guys, the Ku Klux Klan, was okay until I learned they smoke pot. That's what he said. Now, let's be very clear, Mr. Attorney General. The effects of alcohol are a lot more dangerous than smoking marijuana. I've never heard of anybody blacking out from smoking marijuana, but I digress. And let's just talk about the facts. A recent study that was performed by the CFPB, Harvard University, and Western Carolina University found that the states that loosened marijuana laws saw a decrease in cocaine and heroin use amongst teens. They also saw less fighting at schools and less absent days amongst youth and teens. And a JAMA internal medicine report found that there was a decrease in opioid overdose deaths by 25% in states that loosened up their marijuana policies. Not to mention the fact that we are literally living on a 1960 or a 1970 Controlled Substances Act, which is what we're living on today. It was written in 1970. So America, we are living in 2017. Our drug laws were written in 1970 when bell-bottoms were still a thing. Okay? Johnny Carson was a thing. Black and white televisions. We didn't even have reverse cameras in cars. Technology has improved so much, but our drug laws are stuck in the 1970s, along with Diana Ross's hair. America. And here's what shocks me the most about this trend from Jeff Sessions. Not only do you have a flip-flop from the Trump White House, because remember, President Trump was very clear. When he ran for president, he said weed should be something that's left up to the states. But his Justice Department believes something different. But here's what's even more of a shocker. Because the GOP decries most federal programs, they disdain the government intervening into the private lives of citizens, but for some reason, the GOP, the grand old party, the conservatives, they're eerily quiet as Jeff Sessions tries to rehash the failed war on drugs. This is the same silence you hear from them when they try to rehash why the GOP wants to control and plant a flag in a woman's vagina. You see, their outrage for government intervention is only sometime-ish. It's like they only have it on some days. Other days, they don't seem to care that much. Right? But this is going to be an interesting one because I feel as though that at best, The reversal of the Cole memo is heavy-handed, or at worst, we are entering a new era of Trump tyranny, where you see the federal government overtake state rights at an alarming rate. But trust me, these states are not going to take this sitting down. States like Colorado, Oregon, California, the District of Columbia, Massachusetts, Maryland, Florida, and the list goes on and on and on. There are tons of states that have already loosened up their marijuana policies. And to have an aggressive Justice Department come into your state and start prosecuting your citizens for a state law that says they're allowed to smoke weed or they're allowed to grow weed in their house, I think some states, some governors are not going to be very happy. And I think there are going to be some lawsuits. And I would argue that those lawsuits are going to make their way to the Supreme Court. And it's going to be a showdown between the federal government and the states. And I think the states are going to win. And here's why. While this is not my usual argument, I'm going to make this argument tonight. Federalism is an argument. The ideal that what's not written in the Constitution is reserved to the states. And drug policy is something that should be reserved to the states. Now, drug trafficking is different, right? Crossing state lines with drugs are different. Crossing the international border with drugs is different. But if you are growing weed in your house, or if you have a dispensary business in Colorado, how dare Jeff Sessions come in and tell you that you're not allowed to grow weed, or you're not allowed to sell weed? You see what I'm saying here? So I think this is a very, 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 very big overreach by Mr. Sessions. And as a result, Sessions has alienated many in Congress who have called, who can ill afford to lose any friends. I mean, it's to the point where senators, Republican senators, have said they will block every single Department of Justice nominee that comes in front of them until the Cole memo is put back in place. It's not Democrats. These are Republicans from states that have chosen to legalize marijuana who are saying, listen, my state is doing so well that I will block every one of your nominees that come across my desk. Period. I'm telling you, boy, this is a big deal. And this is a very big deal. And I think the fact that Sessions is even thinking, like, this is just, why would you even get yourself into this type of argument? Why would you get yourself in this type of debate when the rest of the world, the rest of the country disagrees with you? This is not how the GOP becomes a party of the new. This is not how they attract young people. It's not how they attract black people. It's not how they attract liberals. Not how they're pissing off the libertarians. Everybody's like, what are you doing, dude? What are you doing? I mean, the landscape has totally shifted on this issue because states overwhelmingly are seeing the benefits of the legalization of marijuana. Not to mention the fact that if you talk to people who are advocates of marijuana, they will tell you that if we legalize marijuana, we can utilize this as a mechanism to slow down people's addiction to opioids. Right? Because marijuana, one, is not habit forming, and two, can have the same effect as opioids do. Because opioids are usually are overprescribed, number one, but two, are given people as a pain reliever after surgery, and that leads them to be addicted to it. But if instead of giving opioids, you're giving people CBD, which is a derivative of the marijuana plant, they won't have to take opioids. But Jeff Sessions is missing all this because he's stuck in 1970 with our drug laws. But I digress, America, I digress. I'm getting hot. I digress. This is just a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess. We should be working on this country and lowering criminal statutes and having fewer criminal statutes and having fewer prisoners. Jeff Sessions wants the opposite. He wants more criminal statutes and more prisoners. That's moving our country in the wrong direction. Period.